We are at the public comment portion of the evening, and any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject matter within the jurisdiction of the Airport Commission that is not on the Commission's agenda. Total time for public comment is 15 minutes. If you wish to address the Commission under this item, please deliver the speaker slip. Are there speaker slips?
No speaker slips.
All right. We will move to the notices that the Lease Review Subcommittee meeting scheduled for Thursday, May 5th, was canceled. That the Ordinance Subcommittee met on Thursday, May 5th at 1:30 in the Airport Administration Building, and that the Wednesday, May 11th, on Wednesday, May 11th, at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted the agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Administration. Concerning the minutes, is there a motion?
Okay, I move we accept the minutes.
And second. All those in favor of accepting the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved. The consent calendar on lease agreements.
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself on this portion for a conflict of interest.
Excellent, thank you. And does that, yes, thank you. Are there any other recusatory situations? Very good. And with 4, do we still have a quorum with 4?
Yes.
Excellent, okay. Shall we approach the lease agreements as a whole?
Yes, you can take
Okay.
the whole consent calendar.
Okay, very good. Is there a motion on the consent calendar?
I would make a motion to accept this consent calendar as presented.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor of authorizing the airport director to execute signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. We will wait for our recused member to return.
He's on his way. He's on final approach.
Final approach?
It's about to land.
You're cleared to land. Now we are to the liaison reports. I see that Mr. Aceves is with us tonight. Please come forward.
Good evening, Chair Martin and members of the Commission. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's refreshing to be able to sit in the audience and really have no responsibilities but to listen and enjoy a well-run operation. But you know, I didn't really have a formal presentation, but before I came over here, I saw a little news piece on, I think it was Key News, on how you had to come up with another $1 million to make some changes in the airport. But they said, don't worry, because they're still like $8 million under budget. And when I heard that, tomorrow we have our final budget hearing, and as painful as it's been, to hear someone actually saving that kind of money, I'd like to have my council kind of request that the airport director come work for us for a little bit. And if she can find $8 million in such a large operation like this, I'm sure she can find some money within our city to help us save money. So my hats go off to your director. Job well done. I'm buying 4 tickets to your gala. And,
Good to hear.
Looking forward to it. So congratulations again.
And you may want to buy those promptly because they are going like the proverbial hotcake.
Well, you know, I'll put it in the mail tomorrow, but no, I have 4 seats reserved.
Very good, sir.
And for
We'll
those
look
that are
forward to
interested, I should mention this Friday is our State of the City. I don't know if anybody's going to be in attendance, but we can let you know that we're not going to be able to save $8 million like you are, but we're doing the best we can. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I see that there is not a liaison from the city of Santa Barbara this evening. Shall we move to the administrative reports? Madam Director. for heaven's sakes, yes, forgive me. We do have a commission matter on the agenda. It was mentioned previously and brought to the agenda here that the commission review recommendations for changing the meeting time. At this time, the meetings are scheduled at 7 o'clock on the third Wednesday of each month, and it was discussed that the meeting time be moved forward in the evening to approximately 6 o'clock. And so it is now being brought before the commission for discussion and recommendation.
I guess I would first ask if the airport staff themselves had any issue with that time.
No, I don't have any issue with it. I think having it any earlier than 6 would be a disservice to our audience that comes. But we checked in terms of any kind of legal requirements, and we can set the meeting whatever time you want.
Commissioner Gilbert?
I don't know, looking at some of the empty chairs here, it makes me wonder about 6. Kind of wonder if maybe we had to look at 7:30. Maybe everybody could be here by that time. I don't know how much of an impact is 6 to us. Being retired, I don't have any difficulty. How much of us on this commission have difficulty, not just staff?
It was brought up in the discussion that we were looking at this as a plus for the general public because it would be closer to after work for them and also the commission and also the airport staff, that there wasn't such a period of time between the normal workday and the meeting. It was generally a 2-hour period between a typical work schedule end and the beginning of the meeting, which could be a hindrance to some. Those of us who are still working as opposed to the lucky ones, Commissioner Gilbert.
Well, some of us go to supper and so forth even when they work. Because I happened to be on the commission one time.
Well, if you go into the 4 o'clock early bird,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
I wasn't at the meeting when this was brought up or discussed, but I think from a staff perspective, we'll be here whenever we have the meeting. So I think in terms of what commission as a whole feels is, the appropriate time that you'd like to meet and, taking into consideration the public. But I think in terms of staff, I wouldn't let that enter into your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
I'm in favor of it, just for the reasons of getting a little earlier start means that we can get out, but I think that's kind of the point of it, and that gap is kind of, I understand it from the staff standpoint. I'm in favor of the idea. I think 6 is a good idea.
Commissioner Tracy?
I'm either go or no go. So if I can make the meeting, it doesn't matter what time. But if I am scheduled to work, then I can't. I do think what Karen said is important, though. We serve the public, and that's why we're here. So we should make sure that the public has time after their work to attend meetings.
Actually, I agree with all points, and thank you for the comment about the airport staff. It's always nice to have that stated. It's assumed, but it's nice to have it stated. I am in favor of moving it forward from the standpoint that I believe that it would enable more public to want to come, as if they go home and now they have to go out again. If they can, in my opinion, if they can go from work here and there isn't such a large gap, we would be more motivating to the general public, was my rationale for it. And from a greedy standpoint, it works better for me as well. But my true interest is in that of the general public as well. So
I would ask then if we have any members of the general public who might wish to make public comment on the issue, since we have such a large general public.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
but wouldn't they have to fill out?
Well, I know they could
No, I know.
open the floor.
Yeah.
It makes no difference to me, 6 or 7, either way I'll be here.
Might add also that in the past, when we had field trips or other events, we had no problem changing the times for those, rare occurrences. So,
And the Airport Commission meetings are all generally rare occurrences, so, from a special standpoint. So, would there be a motion from anyone to make recommendation?
what
I'd
is on
like
the
to
table right now?
recommend we drop it until we have more people here who's mostly not here because they come straight from work. Or both of those people tend to work. I'd like to know what they're feeling about it too.
Well,
I'd like
actually,
to
we're only
clarify what
missing
we're
one
voting
person.
on, too.
We're only missing one person this evening because he is not here and was anticipated, but the other members of the commission were unavoidably detained. They couldn't come at all.
I know.
I'd like
So-
to clarify what we're voting on if we're going to vote, because it's not clear exactly how it's worded.
Well, there isn't a motion to do anything at this point, so we're not voting on anything.
Well, is he moving to table it then?
There was not a motion on the floor yet.
Well,
Well, let's get some more input.
Okay, now we have, and we know where the other commissioner stands because she brought it up, so.
Let the minutes reflect that Commissioner Colbert is now with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are discussing at the moment recommendation that we review a change in time for the Airport Commission meetings that are held on the third Wednesday of each month from 7 o'clock to an earlier time.
I'd like to suggest that since the agenda was not specific as to what was really being considered and that there was no mention of time, that we postpone a decision on this until next month so that the public might have an opportunity to further comment since there was no time presented in the agenda.
Would you?
I would then make a motion that we postpone a decision on moving the meeting time until our next regularly scheduled meeting. And
Which would
that
be at
the-
7 o'clock on the third Wednesday of next month.
Right, and that the agenda reflected the proposal being considered is to move the time to 6 p.m.
I would second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you for the motion.
Before we move on, I was going to make a motion in light of all the events of next month that we actually cancel our meeting in June and then postpone
Oh.
commission meeting until July, unless there's pressing business to
What is the
attend to.
date of the next meeting?
It's right in the middle of all of the events.
Is it? That's a wise idea. Are we able to
It's
do
that
that?
Wednesday.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Depends on what we need to accomplish.
Could I defer that for just
Please do.
a bit? We may have an item that we'd like you to consider, and it's possible we could do a special meeting, like the week after or the week before. But, I mean, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot, but there's a
No.
lot going on for everybody that week.
Right,
And please
exactly.
let the viewing public and the record demonstrate that we're discussing the activities of the grand opening of the new terminal, both the gala, the public open house, and the other activities of that week. So not private parties, but the airport reflected.
Okay,
So thank you.
okay.
Is that motion out there and waiting till later in this meeting?
Have you made a motion?
I did.
Is there a second? Because if there isn't,
There
then
hasn't been a second.
that would save us.
Okay. There you go.
Well, I'll second it. No. If that's what you're asking for.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
That
You
would
just
save us.
did.
I apologize for misunderstanding.
So
I'll
are you?
withdraw
Thank
that
you.
second. Thank
So
you.
there is no second to the motion.
All right.
We're really a crack team. Thank you for trying. We will possibly re-entertain that at a later time this evening.
Okay, thank you.
At that, may we move to the administrative reports?
Okay, our first item this evening is to review and recommend to council to adopt ordinance changes to the airport's Title 18 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and Jeff McKee on our staff is here this evening to make the presentation.
It's the buddy system.
Chairman Martin, Commissioners, good evening. I'm Jeff McKee, the Maintenance Superintendent for the airport. I'm here tonight to discuss our proposed changes to the airport ordinances and a resolution associated with those ordinances. Kind of the outline of my discussion, I'm going to hit kind of the more important points of the proposed changes to the ordinance and the resolution. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, what ordinances are and what resolutions are, the purpose of the change, and the process that the ordinance package will go through, has gone through, and will go through from this point forward. I'll talk a little bit about the proposed changes to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Title 18, Airport Ordinances, a security resolution that complements the ordinance update, and then I'll ask for your recommendation. What I'd like to do is talk about the ordinance first and then entertain questions, and then go ahead and go into the resolution and talk about it, and then ask for your recommendation. As background, municipal code embodies the laws of the city of Santa Barbara. Laws are adopted by city council and then codified into the municipal code. Those are our ordinances. Laws pertaining to the airport are located in Title 18 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code. And the last major revision of those ordinances was in 2001. Rules and regulations are administered by, or that are administered by the airport department, are generally adopted by city council. So that's the resolution portion of this presentation. The purpose of the proposed ordinance is to establish a more robust airport security program, to create a framework for our future ground transportation program, to eliminate unenforceable sections in the current code, and update sections where where courts have clarified the law on advertising, camping, soliciting, and then also to clarify other sections. There's been organizational changes and small edits to many sections throughout the ordinance. The proposed resolution, on the other hand, establishes rules and regulations for the airport users that have permission to enter restricted areas only. So I want to clarify there, the ordinances are for the general public. The resolution will apply particularly to people that are permitted to enter restricted areas. And the proposed resolution also creates an appeals process for violators of the resolution. The development process, airport staff worked with city attorney to draft the proposal that's before you. Airport Commission Ordinance Subcommittee reviewed the proposal at 2 different meetings and recommended it be brought to the full commission. Following your review and approval, the city council will go to the City Council Ordinance Committee for review and approval, recommendation on to City Council, and then it will go to City Council twice, first for introduction and then for adoption. I'll jump right into the Title 18 changes. Like I said, I'll go through the changes in Title 18, and then if I have questions, we can discuss changes at the end of my discussion of Title 18, if that will work. Chapter 4 of Title 18 is the definitions section. We updated many current definitions and reformatted the entire chapter. And we also included additional definitions, mostly related to security, that I have listed there. There's 11 additional definitions in that section. Title 18, Chapter 8, General Regulations, 1808-020 solicitation. We're proposing new language that's consistent with recent court decisions. It describes areas where solicitation is unlawful, and it also describes distribution and where solicitation is lawful, what those things look like. It also defines the terms. Section 1808-040 advertising, we clarified the process for displaying advertising on the airport. If it's on the street side facing the street, it needs to go through the sign committee process that the city has established. If it's facing the airfield, it's at the airport director's discretion and for approval. 1808-065 is the Commercial Ground Transportation Program, the framework for that I mentioned earlier. It creates a structure for establishing an airport ground transportation program, speaks to rules and regulations, that there may be a permit required, and establishes a potential appeal process. And we're talking about the commercial ground transportations that may be regulated under this program are taxi cabs, limousines, buses, courtesy shuttles, and couriers. Section 1808-150 is a pretty long section. We eliminated subsection B, which eliminated language prohibiting demonstrations. We also clarified what unlawful camping is on the airport to make it consistent with city code and other court decisions. 1808-200 noise abatement. We eliminated unenforceable sections there, A through H. Most of those fall under FAA jurisdiction and not city jurisdiction. We relocated sections J, or subsections J and K of that section to Chapter 16, which is titled Takeoffs and Landings, and those sections pertain to touch-and-go landings by turbojets, turboprops, and helicopter training activities. We proposed a new 1808-200 titled Controlled Movement Area. It proposes new requirements for activities within the controlled movement area. The topics are required communication equipment, communication with the tower, and after hours access to controlled movement areas. 1808 and 070 and 188-075, which is access to restricted areas and security identification, were relocated and expanded in the new Chapter 10, which is titled Security. Leading into Chapter 10, Security, we proposed creation of a new, as I said just a minute ago, Chapter 10, Security. It establishes rules for the general public in restricted areas, personnel identification media, tampering with security devices, custody of keys, and unattended baggage in the airline terminal. And as I said, it works in conjunction with the proposed resolution to establish our security program. Chapter 16 is titled Takeoffs and Landings. 1816-040 was deleted. It was titled Clearance of Base Leg and Final Approach Legs. We also clarified sections 1816-010 and 1816-020, made a few changes there to clarify the intent of those sections. We also, as I mentioned earlier, relocated from the previous noise abatement section 1816-120 regarding turbojet and turboprop touch-and-go landings, and also local helicopter training operations. Chapter 18, Operation of Hang Gliders. We moved the definitions to the definitions chapter and then clarified the language as to where hang glider and ultralight operation is prohibited. Chapter 20, Parked Aircraft. We also 1820-040 and also 1808-130 deal with removal of 1820-040 is inoperable and parked aircraft and parts thereof. 1808-130 is removal of wrecked or damaged or disabled aircraft. So we clarified those two sections, what the intent was, where if it's a inoperable parked or parts of aircraft, the owner has 7 days after the airport director's request to move those things. And in the case of a wrecked, damaged, or disabled aircraft, the airport director can require immediate removal or cause removal of that aircraft. So we clarified those two sections. Chapter 8, Title 18, Chapter 24, Taxiing. We deleted the sections on movement of helicopters and a section titled Caution. Chapter 36, Fees. 1836-010, titled Rates and Fees. We clarified that parking rates at the airport are established by resolution of City Council, and we took out references to landing fees and terminal uses. Those fees are established based on the cost of operation. Chapter 40 is titled Enforcement, and 1840-030, Carrying Firearms. We consulted with the Chief of Police, and we're proposing to eliminate specific reference to competency testing by the airport patrol supervisor and patrol officers. Those requirements, the Chief of Police agreed those requirements are more appropriately included in departmental policies rather than in the municipal code. We also clarify in this section the purpose and intent of airport patrol officers carrying firearms is to include both self-defense and defense of others. Defense of others wasn't included in the text previously. So that's a quick overview of the major changes to Title 18, the ordinance revision. Are there any questions that I could answer at this point?
I'd like to first just really thank and commend Mr. McKee and all the airport staff that put a tremendous amount of time into this. It's really a tedious at best activity to go through these things, especially when you've got a lot of other fingers from subcommittees in there. But I really think you've done an excellent job of refining it and clarifying it. And thank you all very much. I think you had a question down there.
Also, just the presentation that you just made, considering that we were discussing one-word changes and things like this, was amazingly succinct and precise and painless. And my hat's off to you on that. So nice work. Commissioner Gilbert.
Got a question on the noise abatement. What is our responsibility now, since I saw that section was all crossed out? What is the, we have a noise abatement committee. Is that gone now?
It does not change our responsibility at all. The only thing, the Noise Abatement Committee remains, and our noise abatement program is unchanged. We removed ordinances that required the city to attempt to do things that we have absolutely no authority to do.
Okay. The other question I have is this will go to the city attorney before presentation, to the city council, won't it? All ordinances usually do.
Chairman Martin, Commissioner Gilbert, yes, the city council or the city attorney has worked with us in developing this.
Okay.
Has been an integral part of developing our package, and will be part of our presentation to the ordinance committee.
I hadn't noted any thing to do that, but I'm glad it was. That's all I had.
There's a lot of stuff in here, but I did find some things I had problems with. I have contradictions and verbiage, and maybe a little heavy-handedness in the wording. And because I wasn't on the subcommittee, I would like to make a motion to postpone voting on this ordinance to a later date to allow a closer review. There are sections in there that make it a crime to do certain things and other things not a crime. There's some contradiction. I think it's still a work in progress.
It is a work in progress.
If you have questions or suggestions, I would encourage us to go through those now. Otherwise, we'll be going through them if we postpone it, next month.
Well, that's going to be taking a while.
So there's no time like the present. If you
Is this time critical? Because
well, no, we've only been working on it. How long have you been here?
yeah.
But we have gone through, detailed review with the city attorney and 2 meetings with the subcommittee. So, we want it to be so that you understand it, and whether we make the change or not, whether you agree with it or not in the end. But we do want to hear what your comments are and respond to those, and if the change needs to be made, we can make the change.
The ordinance that are in place were reviewed in 2001. Is there a time-critical element to revise or update those?
Yes. The security measures that we have today are different than they were in 2001. I think we made some quick changes after September 11th, 2001. And some of the sections in here that we're taking out that we have no authority to enforce anyway are good to get out. I mean, it's important, I think, after some of these provisions in here have been in here for 30 years or more, and I think it's time at some point to update them. And I think the security provisions are really the big driver in trying to get this updated.
It's a lot to digest all at once. If it's not a time-critical situation, then I would like it if we could handle sections by topic or related a little at a time. This is a lot all at once, and that's why my motion is made. If anyone is interested in seconding that, to postpone voting on this to a later date.
First off, there is a motion on the floor, so I have to ask if there's a second.
An example of contradiction is the media, in section for media cards. It's what?
I think I asked if there was a second here, so it's not a comment time.
Okay.
So I was, and we value your comments, but I was just trying to get support of your motion.
Understand.
So,
Waiting to hear.
So the question is if there's a second. There is no second.
There's still opportunity for discussion.
There is now, but once you call a motion, you have to do that. So now you can.
Okay. So we're still discussing that.
Yeah.
Right.
And our understanding of the process is that should we approve or recommend approval of it, it will go to the city's own ordinance committee, and there will be additional review and opportunities presumably for additional comment.
Correct. And then it goes from the ordinance committee to city council for introduction 1 week and then adoption the next week. So there are 2 other opportunities for the public to comment on it.
Well,
But I would
according
like
to this,
to hear your comment.
I would like to, I don't think it's time efficient to go through item by item, but one example is maintenance. Pilots are allowed to do preventive maintenance. They can do oil changes on the aircraft. But it's actually stated in here that it's a crime if they did an oil change on a car. But that's
Yes.
not a reasonable thing, because most pilots who have an aircraft on the field probably have their tools at the aircraft.
But the airport
It's
is
very
not.
restrictive. It's not just
Right.
an infraction, it's actually a misdemeanor. It's extreme.
If I may speak to that, in the subcommittee meeting, it was discussed, and it is, the intent of the rule is to work on aircraft and not other vehicles.
Okay. The media card I was going to mention.
What, can you refer to a section so we could go to
Oh,
it?
okay.
That'd make it just a little easier to.
Specifically for that, you mean?
Or whatever you'd like to discuss.
Okay.
1828 repairs to motor vehicles per use. I'm not sure that's right.
May I interrupt? Well, Commissioner
Mhm.
is researching his item. I did find, and it's a kind of a broad question here. Here's a section in here referencing the prohibiting hang gliders. Okay, I understand why, over the airport. This is section 1818.0120. Page
1808.
Page 22 of our agenda. 1818.0120. And what caught my eye was that, obviously, the operations over an airport is prohibited, but it goes on to say that it's prohibited within 100 feet of any structure within the city. So is the scope of this section beyond the airport? Just asking. That's the way I read this is it's anywhere within the city boundaries. And
Correct.
yes, I'm reading that correctly, and the scope of this section does allow for enforcement outside the airport boundaries.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily be enforcing it, but city police or
Right.
officials downtown would.
We don't regulate airspace, though, so I don't see how that would be enforceable.
Pardon?
In there before. It's existing
it's-
code, it's just wording the existing code.
I think it was an addition, wasn't it an addition for the city part of it?
Well, the original
talking
part
about.
said, is that the
It
crossed
did.
out?
There was an existing.
Okay.
I was really more addressing, I was just addressing really the scope of this document is because, frankly, I think this is the only section that really discussed anything within the city boundaries.
Mhm.
In fact,
And-
1816.095 controls takeoffs and landings off-field, as in landing an aircraft any place within the city.
So there is,
boundaries.
this is a broader than just the airport.
This is municipal code.
This is a,
I think a valid point here is also the fact that this is existing code, and the only thing we're looking at is cleaning up the language within that existing code.
Correct. There is another, I'm not sure which, what the reference number is, but for instance, the city administrator has to give approval for any helicopter landing in the city of Santa Barbara outside of the airport.
okay.
So,
And this-
and that is in,
and
I
that's in
think,
this code.
probably why they put aircraft-related laws in our section, even if it applies downtown,
Got it.
is because that's where people would normally go to find it.
In Section 1808.030, under business activity, it shall be unlawful for any person to engage in any business or commercial activity or provide any service on the airport unless such person has a fixed place of business or specific operating area assigned by the airport director on the airport, et cetera, et cetera.
That's correct.
Does that mean it's against the law for a flight school to come to our airport when they're conducting business and training?
If they are conducting a through-the-fence activity, it is. But if they're on a cross-country flight or that type of activity, that's
this-
not quite the same.
Yeah, if they fly in and pick up a student here,
If that's an interpretation then, is a real estate agent who is showing real estate in their aircraft, that's doing business, and they depart from Santa Barbara to do that, is that
But they're not conducting their real estate
Violating the law.
activity on the airport. For instance, we have through-the-fence flight instructors that need to, our minimum standards talk about the standards that all businesses that operate on the airport have to meet, so it's a level playing field. They have to have insurance, they have to pay rent, or whatever the requirements are. When you have someone that comes from off the airport that has no insurance requirement, but they're conducting the same business, it's not a level playing field to those that are on the airport. And so that's why those rules are put in place. Correct?
That's
I mean,
correct.
do you have-
That particular language, I don't know if this is on, but
yeah.
once again, that language is just a cleanup. And the language that's been added, it shall be unlawful, came from the city attorney's office, if I remember correctly, because it used to say no person shall, and for whatever reason, anytime that there's a negative, it says it's unlawful. So that did come from the city attorney's office.
That was
But
one
this
of the-
provision has always been there. We want everyone doing business, making money off the airport, they have to have an agreement with the airport in order to conduct business.
the change of verbiage from no person to it shall be unlawful is part of something that didn't sit well because it takes what might be an infraction or a warning up to another level. Now it's enforceable. It has to be enforced.
And we do try and
We do.
enforce it. In fact, we're just recently went through enforcement, not necessarily citing somebody, but I guess we pressed the issue with someone that was operating a flight school activity on the airport, but refused to get the permits that they needed to get to operate. And finally, through the city attorney's office, we were able to get them to comply.
So then, if a person has media card, and see, that says nothing to the intent of the individual, I think. So if a person has a media card and they use it but don't realize it's expired, that's breaking the law according to this. But if a person has keys issued to them and they deliberately go make copies, that's a deliberate act. That's not breaking the law in this. It doesn't say that is.
Okay, what section are you at?
Yes, 1810-020. Section D.
What was that again?
1810-020, personal identification media. And people do things without the intent, but the wordage was changed to make a lot of sections unlawful. And then down below, custody of keys, it's not for an act that would be a deliberate change.
So, these are our existing laws. Right. When it's in the municipal code, it is a law, and regardless of whether it says it is unlawful or no person shall, it's still unlawful. I mean, these are laws that you can be cited for.
And the terminology on this, no person shall or it is unlawful, does not change the enforcement. I'm just stating the obvious for anyone that's listening in.
That's correct.
So the enforcement is equal under both wording.
Or lack thereof.
Indeed.
Okay, and there's the section, if I can find it, on issuing media. And I don't think it addresses a visitor who's not based here, who would have no way of getting prior approval or media. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm not trying to nitpick, but I think there are some areas that are not finished. And something of this scope and depth, instead of in a subcommittee, maybe should be worked out in presence of the commission entire, and it would be a lot easier in smaller bites related subject matter.
Okay. Well, whatever the wish of the majority of commission is what we'll do.
I may stand alone on this, but
If I may, I appreciate your concern, Scott, and I'm not dismissing that. And I know this is a document that probably should be revisited a little bit more frequently over a 10-year period, but the technology and security is driving this thing, and there's a sense, I get the sense of urgency here, compliance and all that. I, speaking for myself, have a lot of confidence in the ordinance committee and the staff to get this to a working document that's going to pass the muster of our city attorney's office, and the city attorney's office would, in kind, scrub this. I know that. I'm not a lawyer. There may be some probably better drafting. I feel comfortable with it personally. I thought where you were going earlier about business activity on or off the airport had to do more with people who were visiting the airport, conducting business outside the airfield. People that are, our commercial tenants on the other side of Hollister as an example. That's where I thought you were going there. But I would support a recommendation, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I've realized this is a working document. It's just my personal feeling on the matter.
Are you making a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion then to recommend that this be moved forward as a working draft, and with the assumption that this is going to be further refined.
Well, it won't be further refined
Yeah.
unless
I'd like to-
somebody refines it.
I'm not done yet. I still have another couple of points, if that's okay. Section 18 is 08090, approval of aviation demonstrations. It shall be unlawful for any person to conduct a public aircraft ground, how is that worded? Is it scratched out?
Mr. Chairman, can I withdraw my motion at this point until we
Absolutely.
finish this discussion? Thank you.
Shall be unlawful for any person to conduct a public aircraft, ground or aerial demonstration or exhibition on the airport without a prior written approval of the airport director. Again, you may have people that aren't here. They don't base here, and they come here and they want to give charitable flight demonstrations.
You mean?
This is saying it's a crime.
No. A demonstration or an exhibition would be like they want to do something would be similar to what you might expect for air show activity, or there's a certain degree where you need a waiver from the FAA to conduct certain maneuvers on an aircraft. But it's not demonstrating, I'm not sure what you mean by a charitable.
Young Aviators Program, even a flying club that maybe plans to come to Santa Barbara. All of their members meet here, and they want to walk around and display their aircraft. They're not going to know about this.
Well, generally people do when they have a special event. They know they need to contact the airport director, and if not, they know they contact the FBO, who does tell them they have to contact the airport director to have a special event on the airport. And we have a permit that's for that, and basically what it does is ask for information about security, how many people they're going to have, kind of what they plan to do, just so we make sure it's a safe event. When the B-17 comes, the EAA fills out our permit, and we ask for information that's related to the safety and the security of the event. It's not to prevent the event. We like to have those events. This has more to do with a flying demonstration and exhibition of aircraft, not a static kind of display. But if we have events, we've always had a permit that needs to be approved.
Okay, but it doesn't specify scope or size or anything. So
It doesn't matter.
it's open to interpretation.
And in fact, I think the intent was to control just those types of activities where a group flies in and wants to exhibit something on the ramp. And this is a secure facility, and the intent was to regulate those types of activities.
Right, and we want to make sure that sometimes there are fire code laws that are affected if they're using hangars and want to put tents next to hangars. There's security things that we need to be concerned about, safety.
And not just anybody can get in the airfield
Right,
for the public.
right, and so we need to
Access.
provide a way for access to happen so the public can come to the event. I don't think it was that onerous, Carl, was it?
Also, I'd like to remind Commissioner Tracy, these have been existing, and as valid as I believe your comments are and your feelings, and I respect that, these have not been enforced in a malicious manner by any means in all the time that these ordinances have been on the books. So I think your fear or your feelings, if you will, are justified. I don't discount that one little bit. But as you look at the track record of the way that they are and what the intent is and the actual usage, that should perhaps bring some confidence to you.
I'm still not convinced, but I'm not persuading anybody, so if you'd like to proceed.
We were not differing with you. We were just trying to make sure that you understood the thought process that went into the terminology change.
And again, our understanding was that there was a considerable amount of time that's already been spent with the city attorney to clarify the language and to arrive at much of the wording, in addition to the probably hundreds of people hours that went into this revision. I'm imagining that hundreds have gone before in the amount of time that's spent developing much of this language.
Commissioner Tracy, this section also, the ordinance subcommittee worked on the language in this section just a little bit to add the word public in that first, I guess the first sentence there, to conduct a public aircraft demonstration. That kind of made it more clear on what our scope and what our intent was in this section.
Thank you. I'm finished.
I would like to make a motion that we recommend to City Council to adopt this as...
I need to go through the...
Oh, I'm sorry, the resolution.
Resolution.
Okay. The first half, I'll hold on that. Forgot about the resolution.
Can you see okay on the commission side?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, moving to the proposed resolution, airport security rules. The resolution pertains only to holders of personnel identification media. It dovetails with and reinforces our airport security program. Many of the elements that are included in the resolution are included in our security program or they complement one another. And it complements certifications that badge holders make to acquire their access cards or access media. The proposed resolution establishes authority to adopt rules and regulations, and it establishes standards for airport restricted areas, speaks to permission to enter, escorts in restricted areas, and escorts in security identification display areas. It establishes standards for personnel identification media and conditions for the use of that media. It requires compliance with these rules. It speaks to how the personnel identification media is displayed, lending your identification media, and it requires presentation to a peace officer or an authorized person. Also establishes reporting of suspected security violations and vulnerabilities. It establishes a procedure for confiscation, suspension, and revocation of personnel identification media. It establishes standards for when identification media will be confiscated, suspended, or revoked, and establishes an appeal process. There's also a section that speaks to compliance. It establishes that persons issued personnel identification media must comply with these rules, this resolution, the municipal code, federal security directives, and violators are subject to prosecution. So now, getting to the recommendation portion. We're asking that Airport Commission review and recommend that City Council adopt an ordinance amending Title 18 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code pertaining to operations at the Santa Barbara Airport, and that Airport Commission review and recommend City Council adopt a resolution adopting rules and regulations pertaining to restricted areas in the Santa Barbara Municipal Airport. If you have questions concerning the resolution itself, now would be the time for those questions.
My question is really more the impact of this resolution, and that the administration operations is prepared for its compliance. From a fiscal standpoint, personnel standpoint, is this going to be an additional burden? I know you guys wouldn't launch into this thing without understanding the consequence of it, but I'm obliged to ask.
We are prepared to enforce this and have been enforcing similar rules, and we're just trying to codify it and get it correct, but we have been maintaining this level of enforcement for about the last year and a half or more.
Okay. Fine.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, did this address aircraft without radios and light signals? I mean, that is an approved method that the tower uses for communication, but there is a requirement to have two-way radio communication and or be escorted. Conceivably, you could have an aircraft arrive at this airport without radios.
Could you tell me the section? I know that's in the
I think
ordinance
it was under
package.
controlled movement area.
Right. I think it's 1808-200. I haven't
Yes.
gotten there yet.
Knows it by heart.
I know that the light gun is usually used when there's a problem with someone's communication equipment.
I don't think it addresses that. I'm just bringing up things that I noticed.
Regarding the requirement for two-way radio, it's a ground operation, so we do have the ability to require certain things for a ground operation. You can fly in here without a two-way radio, receive the light signals, land the tower. Once the tower knows you don't have a two-way radio, they would either give us a call and let us know they just wanted to do the light signals to expedite it, or they would give us a call and ask for an escort because they might be quite busy and quite impacted. So, yeah, we do certainly prefer that this remain.
I think the operable statement here is, or be escorted by a person with this capability. Fine, you send a patrolman or somebody from the FBO and you take care of the problem.
Correct.
That's correct.
It's my turn again. Big discussion.
No, I think that is new.
There's several things we found like that along the way. Okay, is it my turn again?
One other thing.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm trying to find this section, and it had to do with the taxi program. And the verbiage is vague because it says may. It doesn't say what the regulation is. It says you may do this, or you may do that, or you may not. And that seems vague for an ordinance. It doesn't say what the rules are.
Commissioner Tracy, was that the commercial ground
I
transportation?
think it was. I'm trying to find it.
1808065?
Scary.
And our intent here is to establish a framework. There will be a set of rules and regulations that are adopted by council by resolution. But this is asking council to establish a framework, kind of inside which the rules and regulations will be constructed.
And those rules and regulations will come back to you at a later time.
So this that we're going to eventually vote on will go to city council, and under the interpretation that it will, if it's approved by them, become law. So the way this is presented, this ordinance doesn't exist in its final form yet. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
The ordinance establishes that city council may adopt a ground transportation program, and it also speaks to establishing rules and regulations that will, how that ground transportation will work. This ordinance just kind of sets the framework in which that program will exist.
And it doesn't specify what those rules are.
But they
Yet.
will come back to you with those rules and develop that program.
I might be able to help. The purpose of this is to give the Airport Commission additional authority, which right now they do not have, so that when we develop a set of and revise existing rules and regulations that govern commercial vehicle operators on ground transportation, we can come and deal with the commission directly and not go to council, so that we can do it in an expedient fashion. This also gives the director the right to administer the program that we would develop. It would be adopted by the commission, and then it gives us the ability to administer it and make minor adjustments in daily operational issues. That was the intent of this. It actually gives the commission some authority that you currently do not have.
I think to add to that, the rules and regulations that we would bring to you as a ground transportation program aren't a law. They are just rules, just that, rules and regulations. And like Tracy said, this sets it up so that Airport Commission can be the approving body of those rules and regulations to start with, and then when we amend them in the future, we would come back to you to, if we need to change them.
I have to say that was a confusing part of this, is that some of these points were written as law, enforceable, and others were like guidelines, which didn't have that legalese behind it to be enforced. Anyway, I've made my points. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Commissioner Tracy, for your dedication to this, because it's what makes us work well. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Clark, you were initiating a motion a while back. Did you?
I was initiating a motion that I think I've now covered all the points there. I think we should, I would like to make a motion that we recommend to City Council to adopt the ordinance and the resolution as presented.
Well put. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
The motion is carried. Are we at the director's report?
Oh, no, we're not. We're,
Oh, noise abatement. My apologies. I jumped around a little bit there.
some meetings ago, it's probably more than just a few meetings ago, I think it was Commissioner Gilbert requested at some point that we bring a presentation about our noise abatement program, because those in the public as well as commission that do not participate in the noise abatement committee, as Commissioner Gilbert does, might not be as up to date about what our, what the program is and kind of what we do in terms of our program.
Thank you. Let me adjust my microphone real quick.
$8 million.
I had it turned off. I just needed to turn it on. Okay. We had received a request at the completion of Phase 2 of the upgrade of the noise monitoring and flight tracking to just give a short description of what the project was and remind everybody about what we've been through and what we upgraded and what we are now left with. So real quick, I will run through that for you. Quick background on the noise abatement program. We first installed noise monitoring in 1992, which for even a large hub airport, that's early on. An airport this size, very impressive. 1998, and all of this was FAA funded. 1998, additional state-of-the-art computerized noise monitoring and flight tracking system with the capability to record air traffic control voice was installed. 2001, we began a Part 150, which is a noise compatibility study. That study was stalled or suspended for a period of time in October of 2001 after the events of September 11 to allow the aviation market to settle and see what happens with demand, because the entire document is, the noise contours are all based on forecast activity, and we needed to see what that was going to be. We then picked back up about a year later, maybe just a tad more. We actually completed the document in 2005, submitted it, and received approval from the FAA in 2006. One of the recommendations in the noise compatibility program was that we upgrade and expand the noise monitoring system. In 2008, we began that upgrade. The first phase was the installation of a multilateral flight tracking system. Specifically what that is that is a series of receivers. In this case, we installed 5 receivers at different locations. One top of Glen Addy at a Goleta Water District facility, one over at the top of near TV Hill at a city water facility, 2 on these mountains on cell phone towers where we rent space, and one of them, what have we got? 1, 2, 3. Okay, on the west side, had to think of it. On the west side, there is one on UCSB property near the Devros Slough. You've seen the large white storage tank Veneco has over there. That is where it is. That was an interesting one. We have a letter of agreement between UCSB, Veneco, and the city of Santa Barbara that allows it to be there rent-free, and we are allowed to access it to maintain it. It takes almost no maintenance, but it was doing. So that is where they are located. They all receive transponder signals. They use some nice trigonometry, basic math stuff to give us a very accurate reading of altitude and location. The second phase was begun in September of 2009, I believe it was. But the second phase initially was going to involve the installation of additional noise monitors because technology had changed so much, and because we were getting very accurate data from the receivers, we did not need those noise monitors. We did install one additional noise monitor in the most heavily noise-impacted area near the Goleta, the Rancho Goleta Mobile Home Park near Kellogg on county property. We coordinated with county on that. So that was one new one, and 2, we replaced the 2 existing and installed 1 new. We also installed 1 additional flight receiver as part of this because we were unable to put a flight receiver on the south side of the airport because of the Pacific Ocean. They actually would have let us put one on the oil derrick, but servicing it would have been a bit much. So we did not. But we did put the additional one on top of the fire station, and it has been a great help for us, and we were getting some odd readings on occasion Those have almost completely gone away. So, and that is, at the end of phase 2, what we ended with was an additional balance of cash because we did not do the additional noise monitors. It was determined they were completely unneeded at this point, and it would have been a waste of money. What we were able to do is we called the FAA, and we were able to get approval to use those remaining funds to do a change order for phase 2, and we went to off-site hosting. We got an upgraded server, went to off-site hosting, and were able to, I think they like to call it cloud computing. You hear a lot of, so we have implemented that, and with that package, we got 3 years of full technical support, service, assistance with reports, and what have you. So that is what the noise upgrade system encompassed as far as the upgrade project. We went from 2 noise monitors to 3. We now have flight tracking that we never had before, and the flight tracking has many enhanced capabilities. We're able to get type of aircraft. We're able to get runway use because the multilateral is a very accurate system that does not depend on FAA radar. We get better position readings than they do, and it's very, very handy. So I've got another slide. Thank you. I just wanted to show you, these are older reports, and I don't like showing numbers of tables, but the system correlates complaints that we enter with the flight time, and it also integrates the voice. So when our person comes in the morning, we see a complaint, we know what time, go right to that area, listen to the voice recording. It'll usually identify the flight for us, and it identifies the aircraft because we get enhanced Mode S information. That is huge. That is one of the main reasons for specifying this particular system, because of the operational data that we're able to get on our airfield. And when we go into our master plan and we're doing environmental reports and we're looking at noise contours, they can see how many operations of what type of aircraft have taken on different runways. Next one, please. We've got color, and it's internal and it's easy to produce. It's very user-friendly. Well, most places use different cities, and we went ahead and had it modified to note the different neighborhoods, because these neighborhoods are what comprise the noise committee. And so the noise committee members like to look at this, and we have one regular member who continues to attend. He's the gentleman from Hope Ranch, and he appreciates it. Next. An additional information, runway utilization graph. We can get many reports. I just picked a few that I thought you might find interesting because you're out there on the field seeing what goes on. And I was surprised by some of this data. The use of runway 15 left surprised me in comparison to 15 right. And then, the use of runway 25 versus 7. Obviously, it changes in bad weather months on the approaches, but we can get a wealth of info. Next one, please. And then the graph you just saw, I just went ahead and listed the numbers that were associated with that, so in case you're interested. This is, let me get my glasses real quick. No, it's not a spirograph, although it looks a little bit like one. This is there green up there too? And red? This is both arrivals and departures. The reason I put this up there is twofold. We're not a small town, Mayberry. We have a lot of activity, and these bunches of arrivals and departures, you can see how successful our public education has been. These are people who are following our requested procedure, and I say requested because we have no authority to require it, but we get wonderful compliance. They try hard, and there is, just for yucks, there are 208 operations on this particular graph that you're looking at right now, and it was one day. And go ahead and the next slide. Some yellow. Those are the overflights we threw in. I don't recall the filter he used to get it down to a reasonable altitude, so it was still legible. But it's a wonderful, Mr. Chuck Logan is our noise operations specialist. He's had members of the Noise Committee, and just public that he has spoken to on the phone who have come into his office and looked at this system and gone through what he does, and he has shown him these, and it's been a wonderful help. And he wanted to make sure that I remember to invite any of you that are interested in seeing this system and going into his office. He would welcome the opportunity to walk you through it, to see what he is able to, the information he is able to get is phenomenal and give to the public, and the information we'll be able to derive, on our runway use when we're looking at options for airfield is just invaluable. And the noise abatement program is still in full force. Mr. Logan is still the operations specialist. He does it very well. He's very dedicated to it. People get calls back quite quickly. This project has gone well. We have had some recent, a few issues with a couple of the digital analyzers that I will say that the vendor is working very hard with us to correct. Us and the New York, New Jersey Port Authority are getting a lot of attention because they have the same system we do, and they got it after us. But anyway, I would be pleased to answer any questions for you, and I would say that the system's been a real wonderful addition.
Mr. Chair. Absolutely.
Tracy, great report, and I appreciate your clarification on the green-red being colorblind. I just a point of clarification, the earlier charts that were up there prior to that exhibit there, my eyes, I'm looking at those dates. Are those the years?
Yeah,
2008?
2008. It was
Okay.
I had him run some new reports, but I was having some computer issues, and I already had these on a slide.
That's fine.
And the point was just the graphics
That's
showing
fine.
the
I just
capability.
forward the public's consumption.
Thank you. I
That's all.
appreciate that clarification.
Okay.
We get these daily, even though this is a couple of years old.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Well, certainly the success of the program seems to be demonstrated by the lack of interest in the noise abatement subcommittee. But,
We take great pride in the success.
I know in some of the subcommittee meetings, there had been some mention that there's even a certain amount of capability to provide the public with access to some of the data on the website. No, that isn't, I guess that isn't something you've implemented yet. Could you speak to that capability?
We do have the ability to, you can go on our website, you can hit a link on the section for noise, and I haven't looked at it in a while, so I will need to double check to make sure it's still active, because they had a couple issues. But it's a flight track. It's and it's specific to this airport. What you see is, well, it's delayed. It's not live. The law requires we delay it, but you can see the aircraft inbound in the area, just in this basin, and it is kind of neat.
Okay. You mentioned Mode S, so your system actually has the ability to capture the Mode S even without the FAA.
Correct.
Capability.
That is one of the significant features of this system.
Okay.
This multilateration and a few other things by this particular company is now being looked at by the FAA to assist them in low IFR conditions for ground operations as well.
Do you find that you have repeat complainers? Is that what usually happens, the same person calling?
Yes. Not always. There are new people that call, and it's not as bad as it used to be, but we've had times when one person called, I think he called 600 times in a month. It happens. And then on our tables, we put an asterisk there, and we pull it out, and we put it so you see that they called and sent numbers, but that number is not calculated in the curve or whatever graph you might see, because it would present an unrealistic, or it wouldn't show what's really happening.
Thank you. It was a very informative and great report. It did offer, I believe you said, yucks, and I enjoyed the couple flights that were in circles
I think it was me.
A little bit of pattern work, I'm sure.
No, I know exactly what that hoop-de-doo up there, that's simple. That was no clearance into the Class C and couldn't raise it fast enough. Right on the outside edge. He's going, ah!
But it does demonstrate the principles very, very effectively, and I thank you for the report.
Yeah, the spirograph is worth 1,000 words.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're not the small town Mayberry that a lot of
Here
people
it is.
think.
No.
Yeah,
So thank you very much.
you're welcome.
I've been trying to get to the director's report
know.
all night.
It's the most important part of the agenda. Okay, I'll just point out again, just a couple of items on the director's report, and if you have any questions about any of the others, I'd be happy to address those. Our passenger count for April was down 3.4% compared to April of last year. Year-to-date, we're down 0.4%. I'm not sure exactly what happened in April as compared to, March and February when we were doing a little better. But it is what it is. So that's where we are.
Excuse me, were there any other, was that a trend elsewhere, or was that just an anomaly here? Did you compare those
Hard to
figures?
say. I think I was looking at John Wayne. I don't think they were
down.
They were down? There was some other report that I looked at that were up. So it's kind of hard to,
Well, misery loves company, though.
That's
is
right.
The point that I was
And-
trying to make, so it wasn't just here.
no.
Did we have any diversions or?
No, I
noticeable diversions?
had Terry check on that. I said, "Do we have rain? I mean, what's the deal?" And she said, "We only had, I think, one cancellation, so it wasn't that." I'm
No
not sure.
ILS outages. Good.
That's a good thing.
Our ILS watcher over there. I think last couple of months ago, I mentioned that our airport app was out for the Android and the iPhone and iPad. So now we're part of the app world. And we're, as Terry noted in her report, we had a total downloads on Android of 336 and iPhone and iPad of 402. So we're picking up some popularity there. Our master plan RFQ, we selected Kaufman and Associates. I think we reported that before. And we held a scoping meeting with them on May 10th. And they went back to put their scope in writing, and so we can start formulating the contract. So once we hopefully get FAA grant funding for the master plan in July, right? We're hoping. Then we would formally begin the process and have a plan for getting our stakeholders involved, getting you all involved, and I think the GA community will appreciate, and finally it's their turn, and we'll get to probably be a 2-year process by the time we get through the planning part as well as the environmental, which should be an interesting process to go through. So just look forward to that, and we'll probably get started sometime this summer.
Well, you all do know how to stay busy.
Yes, right. Yeah, there never seems to be an end to it. There's plenty to do here. The airline terminal grand opening events, I appreciate your concern for us having the meeting in June, and we may have an item that I might need to bring to you in June, but like I said, we could do a special meeting and not do it that week because it is going to be a pretty hectic week. The accessible event on Wednesday, June 15th, we're getting a great response from the accessible or disabled community and accessible organizations to tour the terminal. And our touring staff for that day is going through some special training from the Independent Living Resource Center on being able to properly interact with the folks that will be coming on this tour. So we're looking forward to that. I think it'll be a great event. And you're welcome to join us if you like. So, I mean, don't feel hesitate to come. And if you want to come, just email me or call us, and we'll give you the information. On Thursday, the 16th, we're having an employee event for the terminal employees and contractor employees to kind of celebrate the nearing of the end of the project, and also for the airline and employees that work in the terminal. Many years of very poor working conditions, and to celebrate, they're getting to move into some decent working conditions. And then on Friday, June 17th, is our gala, and that's a celebration as well as a fundraiser for the Terminal Public Art Program. I think it'll be a really fun evening. I encourage you, if you are coming, to buy your tickets on flysba.com. Or send a check made out to the city of Santa Barbara.
And Director Ramsdale, excuse me, just to reiterate, because there's been a little misconception in the public, there are no tax dollars being spent on that event.
That's correct. It's it'll be funded, or is funded solely through our sponsorships, which we've raised about $41,000 to date, and ticket sales. So.
And a
That's
portion of that ticket sales is benefiting the
arts program.
I wanted to make that perfectly clear for the public.
I thank you. Yeah, there was a little confusion in the media about that, but we have music planned. We have 15 wineries from the county that are participating, and they will be pouring their wines. That's what you get as part of your ticket, free wine. And we have some breweries, also local microbreweries that are participating. Great hors d'oeuvre, not light hors d'oeuvres, or heavy hors d'oeuvres, so it's dinner.
Music.
Yes, our music guy over here.
Yeah, and that's through,
We've hired a wonderful band.
So, and then also the opportunity to look at the public art that we have so far, and I think it'll be a very, very fun evening. So,
And many of the artists are going to be there as well.
right, that's correct.
some will not be speaking, however.
And we'll have a very, very short program, so it'll be short on speeches, long on fun. And so-
Director, I also know that some of the public has asked me recently, in relation to the gala, there is a delay for the actual functionality of the new terminal.
Right.
I know that's a moving target, but can you enlighten us a little bit about what that target date is tentatively now?
We expect the building to be ready for occupancy and use mid-July. And the reason, I'll say this, you all know this, but I'm saying this for the public, the reason we're having these events now for the opening of the new building before it's operational is because once the airlines start operating, you'll have to buy a ticket to get to the second floor, which has spectacular views. It has our glass loading bridges, which are just being put in place this week. And so it's really the only opportunity, unless you want to pay $300 or $400 for a ticket to go up to the second floor, to be able to look at the whole building and walk through it. So.
It truly will be a once-in-a-lifetime event.
It's worth looking at. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it will. And it is once in a lifetime. I don't expect to be alive when they do it again, so.
Well, I hope you are.
And then on Sunday, June 19th, is our public open house. It's a free event. You do go on our website to make a reservation. We do expect a lot of people, so we kind of want to filter them through. And we'll have exhibits, and it'll be decorated the same way it was when we had the gala. And it'll be another opportunity for the public to go through the whole building. And our engineer says that people will be able to. We may not have airplanes attached to the loading bridges, but you will be able to go out on them, and they're glass, so you'll be able to see around you. It'll be a pretty interesting experience. So anyway, those are the events. It will be a really busy week. And, we encourage all of you as well as the public to attend as many of the events as you can. And there was one other thing. The terminal improvement project, we went to council this week to ask council to increase the change order authority on the project by $1.2 million. And the reason for that, we only have about $400,000 left in our change order authority, while we still have about $11 million left in the project budget. But that's through the finishing of the new building as well as the rehab and relocation of the existing terminal and the road and parking and so forth. The changes that have been requested by the TSA and the airlines since the project was bid have amounted to about $1.2 million. And those were not anticipated. The airlines have been, and TSA, have been involved in the project since the very beginning. But TSA has had different changes of regulations and equipment and so forth that required the changes that they requested. And the airlines, we've had airlines come, airlines go, airlines handling other, American Eagle is now handling 3 airlines?
Yes.
3 airlines, and before they weren't. So things changed, and that's why we went back to council to try and get change order authority to cover those unexpected types of changes. So they approved it, and we're on our way and doing well. So mid-July is what we're looking at for the new building.
Thank you, Director.
And that concludes my report.
Mr. Colbert?
No questions. All right. Is there a formal ribbon cutting ceremony?
Sorry. Yes, there is a formal ribbon cutting ceremony on at the public open house at noon. And I'll send out a special invitation to you all soon, so just for that special event, so that you know what time it is if you wanted to come at the time of the ribbon cutting. And that will be probably a little longer on speeches.
And just a point of clarification, as you were identifying for the public open house, which is free to the public, the reservations are designed around the parking and the shuttling.
Right. That's
Because we
correct.
have remote parking not at the airport, so it should be clear to the public that that is a similar situation to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, where you're not really reserving the time in the museum, but the parking.
Correct.
Guess I'll take this opportunity to ask, with the wind we've had, about my second favorite topic after the ILS, which is the availability of tie downs over, particularly in the FBO areas. And if there's any ongoing review that I know about 3 years ago, you went through and did kind of a rehabilitation of the tie downs situation to make sure that they were available for aircraft in wind such as we had today. Is there any ongoing review of the availability of that and the condition of those?
Of the actual tie-down instruments that...
the tie-down cabling
The cables.
systems and so forth.
I haven't heard of any complaints, and we haven't done any particular survey. But
We've not done any tie downs that were replaced in the past. It was in one of our project areas that we were doing an FBO ramp, and we went ahead and replaced them as part of the project. But other than that, I've not received any requests from FBOs for assistance or any concerns or complaints from any pilots that there were none available or that they were in bad condition.
did you note some?
Yeah,
or
are you-
anything?
No, I haven't
Oh, just
been
brought
over
it
there,
up.
but I know
Okay.
it had been kind of a sort of chronic situation for some time. And it was particularly an issue when you get these types of high winds.
Right. No, yeah, and if you notice anything, let us know, and we'll follow up.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tracy, earlier you were discussing the possibility that we may want to cancel the meeting for June, and if there were a special meeting called, then it would be duly posted, and we
Oh,
would...
absolutely.
So, did you want to revisit that at this time, Commissioner?
Any idea
Yes.
where you're leaning?
I'd say go ahead and cancel it, and then we can do a special meeting either before, the week before, or week after, and if we have this item to come up, so I'd say go ahead.
Did you want
Do you want me to
Yes,
re-propose the idea? Okay.
if you would.
I move to cancel the June meeting in lieu of the special events and have our next meeting when determined by the airport director.
I second that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried to cancel the June meeting unless duly posted special meeting is required.
Great. Thank you so much.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned.